Alright. Hello, hello. Welcome to episode 6 of the Weirdest of the Weird podcast. My name is Nathan. And yeah, welcome to episode 6. I just said that. That's really awkward. Thought I'd start it off light this week and work on two movie reviews this week. One being The Northman that I just recently saw, and The Wedding Guest that I watched maybe about 2 weeks ago. Yeah. Again, the upload schedule for me I know I've been trying to keep a more consistent schedule, but, life. Life throws you a bunch of really random curveballs and crazy stuff, but, going to not, make it like once every month. Well, I mean, it might be. I can't keep any promises again. But, maybe once in every. My wish would be to have it once every 3 weeks, once every 2 weeks, but it'll be once, maybe twice a month. Here and there I might try to upload twice in a month, so. But yeah, so this week we'll just be doing my personal thoughts and details of what I thought of The Northman and what I thought of The Wedding Guest. So The Northman, funny story. I've been trying to watch this movie for a while, and I was actually trying to watch it in theaters with a friend of mine, but we never really got the chance to really link up to go watch it. But after watching this movie, because it did come out on digital, I am really kicking myself for not watching it, because it is one of those movies that really you should watch it in movie theaters. And then but I feel like if I were to watch it in a movie theater, I would be kind of kicking myself, because then that way, when I do watch it on DVD, I'd be like, man, nothing compares. That's kind of how I feel after, watching Nope and, you know, Christopher Nolan movies. I also feel the same way about that. But anyways, so The Northman came out in 2022, I believe, of this year. It's directed by Robert Eggers. He's probably one of my favorite up-and-coming directors. And again, even though this is his third movie, there are a lot of directors from A24. Ari Aster, again, I still have to watch Midsummer, and I still have to watch Hereditary, but that director, as well as Robert Eggers, are one of the directors in this generation coming up where it's just like, you don't need to make many films, or you don't really have to make that many films to establish your specific brand and styling of directing. And Robert Eggers is really one of those directors who really hammers this statement home. His previous movie prior to The Northman was The Lighthouse, and then the movie before that was The Witch. And me and my best friend Sungo, really gunning to hope for that I can bring him on this podcast. I'm actually trying to have my next episode be a little review that I do on The Lighthouse with him. So be sure to look out for that. I'm looking forward to it. I can hopefully I can make that happen. But so me and The Lighthouse will always be. I mean, yes, The Northman was. And again, getting into it, this movie is very much so the culmination of Robert Eggers, because unlike the movie being an A24 produced movie, this is actually under the guise of Universal. So I can imagine it must have been really cool for director like him to have keys to a bigger production um, on, you know, on this movie. And it really does show watching this movie. The scope is a lot bigger. You can tell the production set wise and, cinematography. He really was given an unprecedented amount of scope on this film, excuse me. And I really love that, and it really does show. So I'm really glad that, there's recognition towards that there are directors, bigger studios recognizing that there are really talented directors out there that, given the right scope, you know, they can really make an amazing movie. And that's precisely how I felt with the Northman. Um it is an unrelenting masterpiece. Um for the scope, it's probably one of the best movies of this year, if I'm going to be honest. It's amazing. And this sense of scope really fares in when you see, because with the Witch and with the Lighthouse, one thing that I love about Robert Eggers is the fine details, both vague and both specific. You saw that with the Lighthouse when he, described the sea shanties, the songs, almost the atmosphere of claustrophobia of being a lighthouse keeper in that specific time era. But again, with this film, the overlying scope and themes of this film delve into Norse mythology and Vikings. And you really do see he talks about Odin, Valhalla, Thor. I think he alludes a little bit to Thor, but they really do, tie in that the cultures of Norse mythology, and I love that, and it really did show. And it's another more appreciation towards Robert Eggers that I like, a director who really does do double down on research for a specific timepiece for a film. I really love that with this film. And again, in my heart of hearts, again, I know I keep talking about the Lighthouse, and I shouldn't be. This is about the Northman, but I don't know. The only thing that's holding me back from this being my most favorite Robert Eggers movie is I feel like, again, this being produced not by A24, not by an indie movie studio. I don't know, the sense of weirdness and further R-rated content was kind of dialed back. I was kind of disappointed in that. I was kind of hoping for a little bit more, call me sick, call me diabolical, but I was kind of expecting a little bit more bloodshed, a little bit more, goriness, a little bit more weirdness. Again, in the Lighthouse, case in point in terms of weirdness that I'm talking about, there's, the famous "if I had a steak" quote. We'll talk about this, when we do the Lighthouse movie review. But again, it's I don't know. I felt like I was kind of disappointed. I was a little let down. I mean, yes, the movie itself does focus more on story rather than being, shall we say, distracted by this. And I like that. The movie takes itself a little bit more seriously and focuses on Amlet's character, Alexander Skarsgård, the protagonist of the story. Yeah, but it kind of took me back a little bit. I mean, granted, there is one scene where there's a little bit of crude humor, but I don't know. I was a little bit let down by that, but that's okay. I give the movie a pass for that. But yeah, and another thing too, it's you can tell that they were marketing this movie towards an indie crowd. Um, like it is, they were marketing it more as an artistic film. And again, you can tell, like from a movie studio when promoting it, when they're promoting it. If they're promoting it more, that means they want more people to see that certain type of film. And I feel like this is the marketing was advocated towards a little bit more of a, shall we say, um, indie artistic, you know, artistic crowd, let's just say. Um, and I mean, that's totally fine. We all have different tastes. Um, but yeah, I could really see that in the marketing. But again, nonetheless, this was this is a really good movie. I mean, if I were to say compare it to any standard, action flick, because yes, I one thing that I really do appreciate about this film is it is a story that very well much so balances some really good action sequences with that the story of having the main character Amlet basically have a character arc that you see that the story really does pay close attention and detail to, and includes some very good characters as well. um, the antagonist in the story, Fjolnir, you really do see not only is he just straight out a bad guy, he's also kind of a tragic character in some ways. Um, Again, you really do see, and again, before I go any further, I'm going to delve into some slight plot points, so you've been warned. Spoiler warning. um, but talking about Fjolnir's character, again, him being a tragic character, this was the story really does acknowledge that no character is all good or all evil, and with Fjolnir, he's just trying to hustle his way to the top. He's like everyone else trying to amass as much power and have a throne of his own as possible. Um, and you see that, again, he's just trying to make his way in the world, try and have a piece of his land to himself. I mean, I might just speculate and say that with Amlet's father, before Amlet's father gets killed and sends Amlet on his quest of vengeance, um, I guess he was just really much so tired of being in his his brother's shadow. Um, because again, Fjolnir is the uncle basically to Amlet. Um, and yeah, and also again, not only was he slightly convinced in this idea, Amlet's wife, played by Nicole Kidman, really much so convinces him heavily to, kill kill his brother. Um, and going on to unfortunate circumstances with characters, you find out from Amlet's mother when Amlet tries to rescue her in the latter part of the story. She explains, I was a slave. Your father just forced me into a marriage and forced himself upon me. And I feel like when the filmmakers were, when they brought that plot point up in the story, I feel like that was a very subtle way of mentioning not only are we all savages, like, men specifically at this time, but again, there was no moral code. And that's really messed up. Again, you know, it was it was terrible. You know, it was families being forced into slavery, and you see this with Amlet's character when he's older and he joins the Vikings. You see him, you know, pillage an entire village for the sake of the Vikings' cause. You know, killing men, women, and children, taking, you know, families, separating them, putting them into like slaves and stuff like that. So again, this was no time in history where, you know, people were all good or all evil. You know, good people, or quote unquote good people, did bad things. You know, Amlet being the protagonist of this story, you expect him to, you know, be the good guy, but again, he's participating in questionable bad deeds. Let's just say. So, um, you know, I love that this film addressed that. Um, but again, what I really love about this film is that I love a film that makes you really root for the main character. Um, and you really do feel I really did feel, you know, Amlet's rage when every time he keeps saying, "I will avenge you, father. I will save you, mother. I will kill you, Fjellner." And it's just like, you know, that phrase, that statement keeps getting repeated over and over again. And, you know, even when he's in the lowest of lows, he keeps repeating it to himself. I'm going to do this. My fate, as it states in the film, my fate's already bound to this. I need to do this. I need to kill Fjellner. And it's so I don't know, it's so motivational in that, to see a guy, you know, really push through the world just to complete his quest for vengeance, just to fulfill his lifelong goal almost of, I need to kill this guy. No, there's no easier way of putting this. I'm killing this guy. So, I really love that. And um it was I love the story did that. And again, I feel like the weirdness of the film is also complemented by the fact that, again, it's almost like the main character, when he joins the Vikings, there's this sequence where there's like a whole campfire, and they recognize that, you know, Vikings and people like him are all animals, and there's just a sequence where they're just growling and, you know, almost being kind of mimicking animals. Um, it's almost kind of terrifying, but it's very cool. Um, but yeah. Couple details I wanted to state that I liked plot point wise, and again, if you're already like halfway into this video, I'm assuming you don't care about spoilers, and yeah. But the knight sword, the sword that um the the wizard, not William Defoe's wizard, but the wizard uh that is in Fjellner's village in the time jump when Amlet's older. Um when he's talking, or in that sequence when he's channeled through William Defoe's character, when the second wizard basically conjures up William Defoe's, you know, character for vision, the knight sword that they explain, I feel like was kind of very much so similar to Thor's hammer, because you see in a sequence where Amlet, when he's captured, um, I mean, I could be wrong, because the wizard does state that the sword cannot be unsheathed at night. It can only, sorry, the sword cannot be unsheathed during the day. It can only solely be used at night. And you see one random soldier try to unsheath it during the day, but it doesn't budge. So I feel like that was kind of a little bit of a similarity towards Thor's hammer. You know, anyone who lift Thor's hammer, no one can lift Thor's hammer. is what I meant to say. It can only be Thor because Thor is worthy of lifting his own hammer. Um, so I feel like that was kind of interesting. Um, and I feel like again the detail of Amlet's mother also convincing Fjolnir to take up the throne of Amlet's father. I feel like that was kind of like a little bit of a Macbeth reference, because if you all are, you know, familiar with Macbeth, Lady Macbeth was also very much so um, the one convincing Macbeth to complete his dark deeds and murderous, ways to eventually claim the throne. So I thought that was also very interesting as well. Um, I have a theory, and this theory is far fetched, but I still think it's true. Anna Taylor Joy's character, introduced in the story. Um, so again, she's a Russian slave, but I felt like, um, and she inevitably becomes the love interest to Amlet's character, but I feel like she's related somehow. Okay, either she could be the same character from The Witch, and, ooh, better yet, she's an immortal witch, so she doesn't age. So there's either that, because she does have some, like, there's like either one or two sequences where she's, you know, looks like she's conjuring some spirits or some witchcraft. Um, but either that or her character is a descendant of the character from The Witch. Or, hang on, I'm just thinking about this. She's a descendant to the character to Anna jo- ah ah bleh, Anna Taylor Joy's character in The Witch, because I believe The Witch happened during the Salem witch trials, and the Northman happened in like 893. So I just realized that. My bad. um, but also another thing that I really loved about the film is you do see some points where it's literally like divine intervention is goading Amlet to complete his quest for vengeance. I mean, towards the end of the film, he does get captured and he's bound up, and then a crap ton of ravens basically break the rope. And it was just like, wow. At that point, I was thinking, wow, literally unforeseen higher forces are telling Amlet, you're not giving up. Come on, get up, clean yourself up, and complete your quest for vengeance and kill Fjolnir. And I was just like, that's crazy. Um, and I mean, kudos to Alexander Skarsgård's performance. My goodness, I feel like I haven't seen him in much, but I feel like that this is his best role to date. Like, you can really see that he was into the character. Like, there are some scenes where he's very much so invested in that character, and you know you really do appreciate that as an audience member. I certainly did. um and it's amazing. Like, he really did a great job. Everyone in this film did a great job. um and again, this movie gives me so much adrenaline. Like, this is one of the few movies that like gets me pumped. Like, the story, the atmosphere. A movie's doing a good job when it actually makes you feel a certain way. And for me, it was feeling a certain way of, I was rooting for Amlet. I really wanted him to kill Fjolnir and, again, complete his quest for vengeance. Um, And in that, like, this movie makes me feel so much adrenaline, like the battle sequences, you know, it was amazing. Like, this movie literally makes me feel so much testosterone. I'm not even kidding. I mean, it's like the only other thing that I know of that makes me feel this certain way is the Doom games, the most recent Doom games. Specifically listening to the soundtrack, because my goodness, Mick Jordan, he's or excuse me, Mick Gordon is his name. He's I mean, he's like a modern day Beethoven. Like, he's able to, like, make art out of heavy metal. It's amazing. It's so good. And watching the film, you're really much so rooting for the main character. And I love that the ending of the film is the most climactic thing I've ever seen. Like, I got like a little bit of it spoiled, but I was just like, okay, yeah, sure. Of course, both the main characters are going to be buck-ass nude fighting inside a freaking volcano. I mean, that's the most batshit crazy battle fight ending that I've ever thought of. Like, it's crazy, and it's it's literally just the main characters leading up towards that scene. Fjellner's just like, I'll meet you in the gates of hell. And then I was just like, is that inside the volcano? And Amlet's just like, yeah, okay. So they just straight up have an Agni Kai in a volcano. Like, that's so cool. But yeah, it's definitely, this is by far one of the best movies I've seen this year, bar none. Um, I loved it. I just The only thing that is not, like, giving this like, the only thing that's letting me away from giving this film a perfect A is honestly the fact that it felt toned down a little bit. Like, I felt like the studio was trying to be a little bit careful and, not making it too much, which kind of sucks. But, I'll let that slide. I loved it. Um, and then another thing that I like about films specifically, or an appreciation for films that I love, is if a film is able to accomplish a lot with simplicity, but it makes you appreciate the film even more and love it. Um, and that's how I kind of felt watching The Wedding Guest. It came out in 2018. I stumbled upon it, funny story, completely on accident. It's on Netflix if you guys are trying to watch it. And I won't spoil it. I won't spoil much of it, but basically the premise is this character, Jay, played by Dev Patel. Um, he's going to Pakistan to try and, uh, you know, help a girl escape from a forceful, or basically an arranged marriage, to be with her true love. And he's being paid to do it. But the plan slowly starts to unravel, and as the story goes on, things start to get really complicated and, in not a great way. Like, there are more tricky situations that pop up that make, this not such a clean job, let's just say. Um but again, that's a pretty simple premise. It's contemporary, and I love that, you know, it's the film plays out and you are just invited with these characters to follow them in a realistic situation. Um, I feel like it's a pretty realistic situation, that, it's, again, to begin with, even crazy that, arranged marriages still happen to this day. Um, but again, it's the fact that they delve into that realistic aspect of it, is what's pretty cool. And the story is executed in a straightforward passion and, you know, way. And you start to appreciate that, straightforwardness. Um, it's I expected I expected the film to go one way, but I was, rewarded that there is like a very subtle like story arc changes. And again, I genuinely did not expect that, um to for the story to happen that way. And when it happened, I was just like, oh wow. And it's, again, you appreciate the film more because of its kind of grounded story and grounded, filmmaking, how the actors, they almost act in a realistic sense. um and I loved it that way. And another really interesting tiny detail that I loved about this film is the main character, Jay. He So I believe his parents grew up in Pakistan, but, when he was born and grew up, they moved to the UK. So he doesn't speak the his parents' home language, but, you know, in the film he goes there and he navigates really well, and he tries his best not to feel lost. And I really I kind of relate to that because, so my parents, it's kind of the same way with my family. My parents, they grew up in their home country, and then before I was born, they moved to the US. So I don't very much so speak my parents' native tongue. But when I go to visit the country on, say, vacation or to visit relatives, I try my best. I try my best to blend in, but it's kind of hard when you don't speak the language, and it's really awkward. Trust me. But I really appreciated this film, and I love that the filmmakers took the time, budget wise, to actually film in India and Pakistan. You can really see that there was nothing faked in that aspect. You really do see that they were there. Um, and yeah, I it was a genuine kind of decent surprise that I really loved with this film. So I highly recommend you check it out. All right, guys, that's going to conclude today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. If you want to recommend me any other future projects or anything like that whatsoever, go ahead and just leave a comment, leave a suggestion, and, yeah. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you soon.